All right, now we are just short of 700 yards, and we are going to dial up to 17, I think. So we're gonna dial out our wind, and we'll see how that does. Oh, that was a hit, lol. That's amazing. Okay, so we overdialed. Hit. I think this is just under 900, 896 or something silly like that. Let me grab that. With just ball ammo. Through the tall grass. I'm not even sure exactly where to dial, but we're gonna start with that. And we have a pretty good backdrop, so we should be able to, in theory, be able to spot our impacts. And again, at this distance, everything looks a bit silly. We probably wanna dial more wind. All right, and we're gonna let this go now. No visual? Okay, I see it. We are about another 8 low. We didn't dial enough wind, so we're gonna need. We'll see if we can walk it in there. Although this is pretty stupid far for just 55 grain ball, even out of a very accurate barrel. Just underneath to the right. Oh wow, that's just underneath. I'm pretty sure that was an impact. Send another.
Good morning, everyone. This is John with Gun.Deals, and today we are going to be taking a look at the NightForce NXS 2.5-10x42, which is one of the nicer, more interesting scopes that I've gotten to play around with. Before we get into that, go ahead and like, share, and subscribe, and comment your favorite retro MPVO in the comments down below. Now, full disclosure on this optic is that I did not pay for it. This was actually sent in by a kind viewer of the channel, Andrew Vachon, who is responsible for about $20,000 worth of gear being sent into the channel for review, so hats off to you, sir, and go ahead and comment "Thanks, Andrew" in the comments down below. As far as NightForce themselves go, we have no relationship, and they probably don't even know that we exist. Getting into basics on the NXS 2.5-10x42, this is one of the entry-level NightForce optics, which means that it's just under 2K in terms of street price. I think around 1,700. In terms of size and weight, while definitely not a compact scope, the NXS comes in at about 12 inches long. However, the weight is just over 20 ounces, meaning that it's on the heavier side of LPVOs and definitely on the lighter side of MPVOs, which, if weight and glass quality is what you're looking for, the NXS has that in spades. In terms of controls, we of course have exposed, windage, and elevation with a 0 stop on the elevation. I have the MOA version with the MOA reticle. I believe in terms of elevation, we have 100 MOA of elevation in the turret, which is probably more than you will ever need for a 2.5-10. The turrets themselves are okay. The clicks are tactile and audible, and I did do dialing with this optic out to 900 yards, both the elevation and the windage. On the left-hand side of the body, we have our parallax dial, which goes from 25 yards to infinity. It is very light and very smooth. Now, where things start to get wacky on the NXS is what NightForce calls their digiloom, which means that you have a single button on your parallax knob that controls all of your brightness settings. Now, you have 2 different colors, red and green, and you have 5 different daytime modes as well as night vision modes for both of them. So here's where things get a little bit wacky. To turn it on, you simply press the button and it will turn on to its last remembered setting. To turn it off, you hold it from 1 to 3 seconds. To change the color, you hold it for about 5 seconds. To go into the night vision mode, you hold it for about 8 seconds. To cycle through whatever mode you happen to be in, your 5 daylight or I think 2 or 3 night vision settings that you have on here, you press the button and it will cycle down and cycle up and cycle down and cycle up, and it will blink when it gets to the lowest and blink when it gets to the highest. And again, all of that is controlled by one spongy button on the side of your parallax dial. It is dated and wacky. even silly, some might say, and more modern versions, not the NXS, but the higher end versions, have the actual dial that allows you to adjust quickly on the fly, which is much more convenient than trying to diddy your optic up in the dark. Moving back from the parallax, we have our magnification ring, which goes from 2.5 to 10. It is a very short 150-degree throw, which I personally like, especially for 2.5 to 10. It also comes with a removable throw lever that you can mount in separate positions via this little screw hole on the actual magnification ring itself. Now your diopter adjustment, which is of course to focus the reticle for your eyes, because everybody's eyes are a little bit different, is actually just the entire rear ocular section of the Nightforce. So you get plenty of purchase to adjust it. It is firm but smooth, so if you set it for your eyes, I don't think it's going to accidentally adjust on its own. One of the major selling points of Nightforce in general, along with their track record and their legendary durability, is the fact that a lot of their stuff is made in the US. Now, this specific option is assembled in the US, and some of the parts are manufactured in the US, but not all of them. If I remember correctly, these use Japanese glass, and I'm not sure if some of the electronics come from different places. So it is assembled in the US, and some of the parts come from the US. What are and is not, well, that's for Nightforce nerds to argue about in the comments down below. Now, before I get to the best and worst parts of the NXS, we should talk about the mount setup for just a second, because I know you guys are going to ask. This is the Primary Arms SLX 30mm mount, because this is, of course, a 30mm main tube, and I have the front landing platform for a RMR, or in this case, a Holosun 507 comp, which is actually tall enough to clear the front turret quite nicely. Now, the best and worst parts of the NXS, at least as I see them. Let's talk about usability. So the eye relief is rated at right above 3 inches, and that is accurate. It's a little bit shorter than I would personally like, especially for only a 2.5x bottom end. Usually scopes are a little bit more forgiving at that end. I was shooting it side by side with a Maven RS 1.2, 2.5 to 15, and that was considerably more forgiving for that same bottom end magnification. Now that is going to carry through to the high end as well. At 10x, the eye box does tighten up. It's still forgiving at a 4.4mm exit pupil, and your eye relief is again right at about 3 inches. It's not terrible, it's just a little tighter than what I'm used to. Now, on top of that, the field of view is also firmly in the okay category, rated at about 40 feet at 100 yards at 2.5x, which is all right. Nothing to write home about, at least in my opinion. Now, another thing that's going to be a turnoff for just about everybody for a almost $2,000 scope is going to be the fact that it is second focal plane, specifically in the MOA variation that I have here. Now, I don't have any problems with the reticle other than the lack of wind holds. It's precise, it's fine, it does all the things you need to do for an MOA reticle, other than the wind holds again, of course, which would have helped out here in the South Dakota grasslands. But just the fact that this optic is second focal plane in 2025 made half of you rage quit the video right there, and honestly, I don't blame you. But now let's talk about the one thing that I can't complain about on the Nightforce, and that is the glass quality. While initially I wasn't overly impressed with its quality, side by side with the Maven again, which is a $1,200 Japanese scope, so a little bit cheaper. At those extended ranges, the Nightforce seemed to have a much higher resolution compared to the Maven, which again has a much higher top end at 15 versus 10. So the extra 5x on the Maven, while it does get you closer to target, it was a little more milky, a little more blurry, where even at those extended ranges, nearly 1,000 yards, the 10x on the Nightforce always remained crystal clear. So the glass quality is very good. Edge-to-edge clarity, fantastic. The resolution, the colors, the light transmission, there's very little to complain about it, which you should expect for nearly $2,000. So in a head-to-head with the Maven that I have a lot of time on, even with the lower magnification, I think the resolution is much easier to use at extended distances, especially on hard to make out targets where they kind of blur into that background. That resolution, that light transmission is very important, even though again, it does have a little less magnification. On top of that, it's also a ½ pound lighter than the Maven. So there are some advantages and some things about the Nightforce that I like quite a bit. Unfortunately, it's wrapped up in a second focal plane package with wacky illumination, no locking turrets, and no wind holds on the reticle that's again in second focal plane. So the glass and weight are very good. I think those two things are pretty objectively good about the NXS 2.5 to 10. However, everything else kind of holds it back, except for one application, and that's going to be hunting, where weight might be a serious consideration and where that glass quality and clarity is going to be paramount, and you might not need 20-25x on the top end if you're only taking shots within 500 yards. However, if we compare it to the rest of the field of modern offerings for a tactical MPVO, I think it's lacking a lot of the features. And as a quote-unquote entry-level Nightforce option, it doesn't do the things that the higher-end options do, and you're still paying a big chunk of change for it. So I think that there are more competitive, more modern options. Not that it's bad to use, because again, I did take this out to 900 yards on a 20-inch AR with just 55 grain ball in high winds, and I was able to spot my hits at those distances, or more importantly, my misses at that distances, because it was quite a bit, as that is essentially Hail Mary distance with ball ammo, but I digress. For me, it's an optic that simply does not make sense in a dollar-for-dollar context against basically anything else in its price tag with more modern features. I think you can get a lot more scope for the money than the Nightforce NXS 2.5-10. With all that out of the way, gentlemen, let me know what you think of the Nightforce NXS 2.5-10x42 in the comments down below. And with all that out of the way, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. I will see you in the next one. Peace off.
Again, I think that last one might have been a hit, but who knows?